Professor Wale Soyinka once said that the man dies in all who keeps silent in the face of tyranny. Nigeria has been convulsed by protests that started with anger over police brutality and have broadened, drawing worldwide attention. Thousands of Nigerians have been demonstrating for weeks against the notoriously brutal and corrupt police agency, the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, otherwise known as SARS. The show of popular anger fueled by long-standing grievances over corruption and lack of accountability that posed the biggest challenge to the government in years. The demonstrations took a deadly turn last week as soldiers fired on crowds of protesters at Lekki, the epicenter of the protests here in Lagos, inflaming Nigerians who are already concerned about police use of violence against the demonstrators. Amidst public outcry and accusations and denials by the government, what's next for the EndSARS movement? With me to discuss this issue is an activist, a prisoner of conscience, and the convener of the civil rights group Concerned Nigerian Group, Deji Adeyanju. Welcome to SaharaTV.
Thank you so much for having me once again today.
Deji, let me ask you point blank as we delve into this discussion. Has the narrative changed with regards to the EndSARS protest?
No, it cannot change because no matter how many contractors, PR firms that the government hires, no matter how many billions are dispensed, the truth remains that government, hired thugs to disperse protesters, to attack protesters. Government gave order, just like it happened when Shiites were killed in Zaria, just like it happened when IPOB members were extrajudicially murdered in the southeast. Government and the President Buhari in particular gave order to soldiers to shoot at unarmed protesters. So that narrative can never change. When the story of President Muhammadu Buhari and this government is told, these extrajudicial killings, will be hanging boldly on their necks, and there is no way that they can get away with this blue murder.
Now, what has the EndSARS protest achieved so far in spite of the lack of structural change?
Well, it has achieved one fundamental thing, that Nigerians now know that they can indeed hit the streets and protest, because this is what many of us have been agitating for over the years, in the last 5 years. And we have been constantly saying that, the Nigerians must embrace the culture, the spirit of protest. Look at what is happening in Belarus. Months and months, people have been on the street. Look at the development in Italy now, and all over the world. Like I have said repeatedly on this program, that the course of mankind has been changed by protest. That protests remain the most congent, the most germane way for which societal change can easily be achieved. It's one of the fundamental ways. And if you look at our constitution says sovereignty belongs to the people, and the government exists because of the people. So, you see, the people, they are the real employers. Government only exists because of the the delegation of powers that has been conferred on it by the people. So it is the people that confers legitimacy on government. So if the people have grievances against the government, then government is a constitutional responsibility placed on elected officials by our ground norm, which is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, has amended that government and citizens who have been elected as leaders must listen to the yearnings of the people. And that's why philosophers have said that the voice of the people naturally is the voice of God. But here, our leaders are trying to show to the people that the people do not matter. And what the EndSARS protests and agitations has succeeded to do is to show that indeed, protests are so important. Look at how confused and how scared the government was for the 2 weeks that the protest lasted. And they became so helpless. They were looking for leaders to compromise, to bribe, but because there was nobody to bribe. Look at all the tactics that they resorted to, they think that they've succeeded, but they have not. In fact, they have reignited the fire. There's a serious fire burning in the hearts of Nigerians, and believe me, it's not going to stop anytime soon.
Despite the government attempt, based on what you said, to delegitimize the protest itself, and considering the fact that you said it has also reignited the fire among the citizenry, we would like to know, how is the movement actually evolving now? And are we going to see new protest dynamics come into play in the near future?
You know, in my mind, I have seen for the first time musicians, Nollywood people, artists, you know, songwriters, producers, all manner of Nigerians, influencers, people who have never shown any sign or any interest in agitation, in activism. I'm seeing a new nation emerging, evolving. And you can see, even from the conversation, you can see how people are shutting down Fashola's falsehood on social media. You can see how people are shutting down, they are just shutting down the propaganda as government begins to try to, set tone for propaganda. They shut it down. You can see what the Jesuits and so many people did with citizen participation. You can see that the narratives of what is unfolding in the country is in the hands of the people. And even the people who were initially reluctant to join the protest haven't seen people on the streets all across the country, in Jos, in Kaduna, in Kano, in Adamawa, in Enugu, in Cross River, in Imo, in Lagos, in Oyo, in Osun, in Ondo, everywhere all over the country. I haven't seen people on the streets. People were energized to come out and join, because it was getting to a point that it will seem as if it's a betrayal on your part if you did not join or identify with the struggle. So we are gradually getting to that length that as a people, and you can see that even the thugs that the government unleashed on the citizenry, you can see that they cannot control the thugs now. The thugs have gone around the country destroying public property, and this is why we kept warning them. When they initially tried to, introduce thuggery into the thing, we warned them, but they didn't listen. We warned them and warned them and warned them again. But you see now what is going on in the country, that their thugs have turned against them, that the palliatives they were hiding, the thugs have gone after their palliatives. And you can see that the level of incompetence of the government has been exposed by their tactics. So this is an idea whose time has come and nothing can stop it.
The protest actually morphed into a much larger critique about Nigeria. Everything from police reform to security to extrajudicial killings. I would like to get your thoughts on this. Are there other underlying issues that had fueled the recent protest? And considering the fact that the anger over the suspected misuse of government funds and palliatives, which you mentioned earlier during the pandemic, has also become an element of popular anger. I mean, considering the massive looting and pillaging that we are seeing in recent days, including today, as a matter of fact. I mean, are these issues really germane? Are they fueling the protest at this point in time?
These government shared billions in 3 days in the guise of palliatives. A government that takes, you see how long it takes them to do voter registration, 1 year plus, but they shared billions of cash. We are never talking about, forget about the palliative. The palliative is just, by the way, is insignificant. These guys, they shared billions in 4 days with no trace, no record, no evidence, zero accountability. So what they don't realize is that by setting out the thugs to go on the street to attack the protesters, the thugs now have realized that, now they are attacking government buildings. They've gone after their palliative. Now the thugs now realize that they can go to a politician's house. Look at what's happening in Calabar, in Cross River State. The thugs are going to politicians' houses, going to traditional rulers' houses, and they are stealing money. So they now realize that, so what is going to happen to them, what I'm predicting in the end, is that these thugs they are releasing may be their eventual end. Because you see, if you look at the analysis of what is going on, anybody who is sane in the country realize that I saw thousands of people gathering in Jos to feast on the palliative in Jos. Then I realized that the ruling class and the elite are in more serious danger than we have ever thought in this country. You see, with the level of hunger ravaging the land, with the level of injustice ravaging the land, with the level of bad governance ravaging the land, it's only a matter of time till these thugs turn against those who send them. And whether anybody likes it or not, people may dismiss what I'm saying with the wave of the hand today. But one thing one thing is central to everything that has happened. That instead of destroying the NSAS movement, in fact, the oppressors, they have further strengthened the movement. Because when next people hear that there will be protests, everybody will want to key in and join. Even the thugs will want to use the opportunity to go after the politicians. So they need to be very careful when next they are sending thugs outside to go and attack protesters. They need to be extremely very careful, because only a spark, a simple spark, will ignite that same thing that they are all afraid of. You know, they shouldn't push Nigeria to that level where people will no longer be scared of repercussions of their actions. And that is why we have been saying that people, look at the 5 demands of the NSAS protest. Very simple. These are doable objectives. They are not, unattainable objectives. Show goodwill. Government should show goodwill by not just pronouncing an audio ban. Government should go ahead to implement. For instance, there is nothing bad in saying you've increased police salary by 20,000 naira extra. That is insignificant. Look at how much the legislators are getting. Look at how much Aso Rock is getting. The money that is used to service our presidential jets alone is enough to take care, to add a 20,000 naira increment to the police force. How many police force do we have? We have about close to 300-something thousand police people. So add 20,000 naira to them per month. That is almost insignificant. So, but you achieve more results. Look at the police barracks. Look at the police colleges where these guys are. We were also saying that open, a fund for victims, people who have suffered in just one form of injustice or the other. Have a panel, like the Peter panel, that is truth and reconciliation, where people can come, people who have suffered. We've just seen a report saying over 34,000 people have been killed by SARS, and I think in the span of some years, not too many years. So you look at the situation, those guys that have died either in custody or even during the NSAS brutality. In Lagos, we saw police extrajudicially murdering people on the streets. So you can see that these guys, they've not learned their lesson. That the reforms that we were all crying for, the reforms that we were all yearning for, praying for, while we were agitating, unarmed protesters were shot at by the police, unarmed protesters were shot at by the military. So you can see that no lessons have been learned at all.
Yeah. Based on government's efforts to actually address the demand, so to say, history and its litany of lost chances, the pile of vanishing declarations and the volumes of vaporous government inquiries and panel reports, it can be so disheartening to consider that it's hard for anyone to confess suddenly to a brightening outlook. Now, may I ask you, do you have any sense of optimism towards what the Buhari government has, the efforts it's taken in order to address these issues at this time?
This is the 4th time that they are going to ban SARS. This is the 4th time that the regime is going to ban SARS. And you can see that this particular government, this government has, completely, when I mean completely, and I'm putting emphasis on the word completely, this government has completely exhausted its credibility limit to the Nigerian people. So when you put that vis-a-vis what they've done in the past, the 3 other audio bans of SARS, you can see why Nigerians did not want to leave the streets, why Nigerians did not believe that the government would do anything different from what they have been doing in the past 5 years. So this is the reason why people are skeptical about government, and so government needs to, reinvent itself. Government needs to show commitment by getting back the trust of the Nigerian people. Nobody hates the Buhari government. Nobody wishes the Buhari government ill, but the Buhari government has done everything contrary to the well-being and the general welfare of the Nigerian people. So you do not expect people to be praising the Buhari regime and be giving them roses or flowers. So that is practically impossible for the Nigerian people to trust the Buhari government because of its antecedents. The Buhari government, they've constantly violated people's fundamental human rights. They've killed several protesters in this country under our watch. Look at what the NBC is doing, going after the media. During the height, the peak of this NSAS problem, during On the night of the shooting, NBC was busy issuing circular to news media houses on how to report. So you can imagine a government so heartless, so wicked. And just today now, NBC has placed fines on media houses for doing their job. And this is why we're writing NBC early tomorrow, first thing in the morning tomorrow, to caution NBC and give them last warning for the last time that they must stop undermining our democracy, and they must stop acts that are capable of undermining our democracy, and not just democracy alone, undermining the interests of the Nigerian people, because these acts have shown for a fact that they do not mean well for the Nigerian people. You can imagine a military that we have. Look at General Buratai coming today to say criminals are threatening them with visa ban. This is a man that said the Nigerian army under him will not be loyal to the Nigerian people, it will be loyal to President Buhari. So you can imagine how shameless these folks are. These folks are people who they see patriotism as loyalty to the president instead of loyalty to the country. And that's why you can see all these rigmaroling they are doing. But however, the Nigerian people should be resolute. The Nigerian people should be unmoved. Government will come and government will go back. The country will remain.
Now, let me take you to task on this, because it's quite fundamental based on the issues we're still looking at and the credibility of this government. As you know, the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has denied that there were any deaths during the Lekki massacre, although despite the video evidences and despite Amnesty International and eyewitnesses, the Nigerian military, or at least a wing of it, the army said it's a fake news. And even the president did not even talk about the Lekki killings during his presidential broadcast last week. I mean, one begins to wonder, what do you make of that? And how much stock do you think Nigerians are putting in the promises of this government?
Well, basically, this set of people you have mentioned, they are going to be remembered for very bad stuffs that they have done to this country, very bad stuffs. And this is why nobody takes them serious. Nobody takes the army serious, especially the army under Buratai. Nobody takes them serious at all. No sane Nigerian takes them serious. They've lost credibility to the point that look at what they are doing to them on social media, dragging, they're laughing at them. Even when our soldiers, patriots have been killed, instead of people to sympathize and show empathy, they are now saying it's fake news. So you can imagine the level of ridicule that the army has See, it has never been this bad before in the history of Nigeria. What these guys have done to the reputation and the image of our country, we take another 50 years, to repair. However, even Sanwo-Olu himself, I think he came back to say people died. However, let's even go by his earlier statement. Is it not shameful that as chief executive officer of a state, under you switched off light at the toll gate, you removed cameras at the toll gate, and you still had the effrontery to insult the sensibility of the Nigerian people? These guys, the reason why they do all this is because there is no repercussion. That's why somebody can just wake up and say anything he feels like, because he knows that he will get away with it. So Nigerians must wake up to the reality that as citizens, we have a responsibility as citizens to ensure that we teach people like these lessons that they never forget. Because if citizens do not wake up to their responsibilities, there is no way that leaders will also wake up to their responsibility. So we have a responsibility. The reason why Buhari can read a 12-minute speech without making references to the massacre and extrajudicial killings of Lekki people is because he did it against the Shiites and he got away with it. He did it against the IPOB people, he got away with it. So he feels that he can do it again and he will always get away with it. And the reason why we must not let this slide, even after his government, the citizens must go after them, follow them to the International Criminal Court of Justice to make sure that the right thing is done, so that another president will not come and do it and get away with it. So this is how nations develop all over the world. Look at what all the rubbish that Charles Taylor did when he finished. But they didn't let him get away with it. And that is why today he's facing the full wrath of the law. So if we allow these guys to get away, and that's why good attack will come together and tell soldiers today that they should not be afraid of the ICC, and they should go ahead and be ruthless. So it's because they feel, because they did it with the Shiites, they got away with it. They did it with the IPOB, now they did it with NSAS protesters. They also believe deep down in their heart that they are going to get away with it. So we must not let them as citizens get away with it. So Nigerians in The Hague, in the US, in the UK, we must collectively join our voices together. We must do the needful as citizens so that these guys will not get away with everything that they have done.
It's easy to listen to this conversation and say we've got some huge challenges in front of us. And you have done a wonderful job articulating what some of these things are. Is there anything that, as you think about this, maybe it's even thinking about this energy with some of our young people as a whole, that is giving you a sense of hope? And what's ahead for the movement and the protest?
Well, I have seen a lot of hope in young people. See, in Abuja, protesters were attacked 7 times. They didn't leave the streets. In Lagos, same thing in Alausa. So you discover that people are gradually getting to that level of resistance. So if they had not brought soldiers out to kill people and declare emergency curfew, people will still be out on the streets. So you can see the level of commitment that in Abuja, as they were attacking, the next day they come back, in the evening they come back, in the afternoon they come. So you can see the level of commitment of the people. The commitment is there. So, I'm energized. I never thought that in my lifetime that my generation could do this much. And for my generation doing this much in my lifetime, I know that we can do more. So this is a good starting point. And one thing I can also tell you, I can assure you, is that a massive reawakening is going on daily, and it can only get better.
Deji Adeyanju, thank you very much for your insightful analysis and your perspective on this issue.